This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
If you thought making money on real estate was just for big spenders, you're in for a surprise. There are investments out there that require very little cash up front, yet have the potential for outstanding returns. Where are they? How do you get hooked up? Visit jasonhartman.com. You'll learn everything you ever wanted to know about investing in real estate, but were afraid to ask. You'll learn about the best areas for cash flow, how to make money with tax-free income, how appreciation works, and more. You can even see how to get back the taxes you've paid for the last 5 years just by investing in real estate. Visit jasonhartman.com.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Alrighty, folks, one of the videos I watched over the weekend was Ken McElroy and his lovely wife, Danielle, talking about 3 things that are more important than money. Now, let me set the stage for you so we have clarity. And yes, we will go through the 3 things. Ken and his lovely wife, Danielle, were up for the holidays visiting Ken's mother. Near as I can tell, Ken's mother is 95 or 96 years old, something like that. And she's living in a very nice old folks home. So basically, Ken and Danielle went around and they interacted with the folks. And they came away with 3 things that were more important than money. I want to have this conversation with Jason Hartman, run through these 3 things because both he and I do a lot of traveling. And I think we've seen the same things, but we'll get into that in a minute. How you doing, Jason?
Hey, good, Michael. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you and everybody.
Absolutely. So when I was watching this or listening to Ken's video, I was just thinking about all the interactions I've had with folks 70, 80, 90 years old when we do these amazing 5- and 6-star vacations. And the first thing that apparently is more important than money is, I think it's pretty hard to disagree with, and that is health, right? Health is more important than money. Because again, as you say, if you don't have health, it doesn't really matter. If you get sick, it's the only thing that matters. But I'm curious what you think on health being something that's more important.
Oh, they say a healthy person has a million wishes. A sick person only has one wish. And
Amen.
that is definitely true. I don't know, coming from Ken, if this is all exactly accurate, but whatever. But, conceptually, I mean, I agree. Certainly, your health is incredibly important. I would say the only thing you could argue that might be more important than your health is your spirituality. And that just depends on your belief system, your belief in God, the forever after, etc. But that's very individual, very different. So we'll go with health as an earthly concern. Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing about health, again, I worked in tech for 20 years and I was in a very high stress job. And I saw my peers and frankly, people above me lean into bad habits. Right? Not only drinking, but pharmaceuticals and cheating and, all of these just other habits. And, it doesn't matter how you look on the scoreboard, but if you're rotten to the core and you're addicted to things, your life can spiral really, really fast. And I just think more people need to pay attention, right? You're on this rat race chasing money. And if you're not taking care of yourself and you're doing things that could short circuit your future, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. I think that a good way to look at some of that stuff is that money is a magnifier. As Earl Nightingale said many years ago, when I was 17 years old, I discovered his great work and it was life-changing for me. He said, money is like alcohol. It makes a good man better and a bad man worse. And look, we all have our indulgences, and I actually believe that a little bit of escapism is healthy, actually. Some may disagree with me on, just a moderate amount of escapism is kind of a reset. It's kind of like rebooting your computer, rebooting your phone. It sort of makes you fresh in a way, So, listen, I drink alcohol a little bit. Maybe once a week, I'll have, a couple of drinks. I used to have more when I was a kid, but it's just too hard on my body nowadays. And when I say a kid, I mean a young person. Of course, health is got to be the most important earthly concern. No question about it. And if you're an indulgent person with bad habits, money will just magnify those opportunities.
Yes.
I mean, Wall Street's the perfect example. I always say that Wall Street is the modern version of organized crime. And you've all probably seen the show Billions. Maybe you've seen lots of other movies and shows about Wall Street, read about Wall Street, and all of the parties and the decadence, the cocaine, the strippers, the whatever, right? That's just so unhealthy and awful. People have to keep their indulgences under control for sure.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on health that I just want everybody to hear is, as somebody who went on a year-long health kick last year and did some amazing things, I could tell you from firsthand experience, it's a lot easier to remain and stay healthy at 30 than try to get healthy over 50.
No question. Yeah.
Don't burn your 20s and 30s, because again, when you're 20, you're made of plastic, right? Yeah. You roll an ankle or whatever, you're fine the next day, just tape it up. Man, you're 53 and sneeze wrong. Shit breaks. So again, realize, it's like, I got to take a week off. Oh my God, that sneeze was terrible. So again, folks, realize as you get older, getting healthy will get harder, but it's still worth it, right? If you're like me at 52 and you're unhealthy and you're 35% body fat and you want to get better, you can. It's just going to take more work than it did when you're 20. So that's the first one. Health is more important. The second one was kind of on the same lines, but I do think it bears a separate category, and that is actually mobility. Being mobile is taken for granted when you're, I don't know, below 50, maybe even below 60. But as somebody who has gone on some amazing cruises and gone to some amazing countries, I'm always left flabbergasted at the folks who spent tens of thousands of dollars and never leave the boat because they're in a wheelchair or a walker or whatever. So folks, you've really got to watch your mobility. If you lose it, if you use it or you lose it, even if it's just walking. Again, one of the biggest things for my health transformation was simply walking. And folks, please watch your mobility, because once that's gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it's true. Look, our bodies were designed to move, and we've got to move them. It's just really, really important. And to your point earlier about recovery, I had a pretty bad dual shoulder injury, both shoulders, a little over a year ago when I was hosting one of my famous yacht cruises, my yacht masterminds. And I'm going to do another one. Michael, you've got to come on this one, Croatia in June of this year. So it's going to be great. We get great people together and mastermind and just have a lot of fun and I charter these big super yachts. It's amazing. But anyway, I was doing water sports and I hurt both of my shoulders really badly. And that recovery was awful. I basically couldn't work out for about a year. I mean, wow. It was like someone says, well, take a yoga class. And I used to do yoga religiously, I don't mean religiously, but, but I used to do it all the time. Right? And it's like, first I've got to just see if I can raise my arms above my head.
Can I wash my hair? That's all I want to do.
And can I sleep? Can I not wake up in pain while trying to sleep? I mean, it was so bad. So what I realized from that is that had I been in better shape, the old thing is dig your well before you're thirsty, right?
Correct.
Had I been in better shape in advance of that injury, it probably would have been either completely prevented or just a much lighter issue than it was. So I really have new respect for injuries and how they can just take you out of the game. It was awful. I mean, it was just awful. So mobility, not getting injured, is a big
Yep.
part of it. It's like, it's like Warren Buffett says, we're both investors. We talk about investing. That's what we teach. But Warren Buffett says, the first rule is don't lose money, right? Well, don't lose your mobility. Don't get injured,
Yeah.
right? That's the first thing. So
Yeah.
what I did do, though, and this may sound like a retreat, but whatever, I did decide to stop, or at least really reduce my interest in sports where injuries are likely. All my life I've been a skier. I love to ski, and I'm pretty good at it, or at least I used to be. I haven't been doing it lately, but skiing is you're just asking for an injury, right? That's a high injury potential, and I just don't want to go through this again.
It's funny you brought that up, because again, one of the things that my history says, I did CrossFit for about 4 years, or maybe even 4.5 years.
That's good and bad. That'll get you injured. A lot of people have CrossFit.
I was in amazing shape, strongest probably I'd ever been. But yeah, I mean, it brings on injuries. And I still remember that nasty kettlebell swing that slipped a disc in my back, and I was out for like 6 weeks. And to your point,
be extreme, just
no more
extreme stuff. Okay.
No maxing.
Yeah.
And again, as somebody who did a remarkable transformation last year, I would tell you again, it's not about going heavy, right? For example, I can bench 225, right? So I can get 225 up for reps, but it's work. I need a spotter. You just never know when that last rep doesn't work. So instead of trying to max out and go higher, I would bench 185 or sometimes even 150, but I would go for 15 or 17 or 21 reps without a spotter, because I could always get it up. So folks,
and that's all variable dependent on your body weight, of course.
Correct.
So, you should certainly be able to bench your body weight, right? Yes. For a man, not a woman. Yeah. So here's the thing. Let's liken that to investing, right? Because that's what we teach. With investing, right? Are you constantly one of these people that's trying to hit the home run? And if you're trying to do that, rather than just doing the daily boring work, right? The work of investing, of being patient. I mean, a big part of investing is just patience. It's waiting, right? Yeah. It's just showing up every day, managing your properties, managing your managers, doing the boring stuff. Whereas some people just try to hit these home runs. They try to time the market. They try to do all this stuff. And it just look, there are so many studies saying this just doesn't work. Occasionally you'll hear a lucky story, right? But that would be likened to injury-prone sports, extreme powerlifting, whatever it is, right? You're going to get an injury. You're going to get a big setback. For me, just show up and do the boring work. The value investing, Warren Buffett style.
Yeah, repetition, discipline, keep doing the reps. Don't go for the home run, grand slam, whatever. I agree with that. Well, let's get into the third thing. This is the one that I honestly question, because again, you got to remember the setup. This is an old folks home. And, again, they talked about, I think they said there's like 6 centurions there, which means there's 6 people over 100. And the third one that they talked about was relationships. And basically one of the currencies inside the community was how many people came and saw the residents, right? Some people had, kids routinely come, every week, every month. Others had nobody come. Yeah. And, it did get me thinking a couple of things. First and foremost, I have a really small circle. So I'm sure I would be on the side of not a lot of people come to see me, but I'm just curious.
I'll come and see you.
Yeah. Dude, I appreciate
you. Have to come and see me first. I don't know.
Yeah. Amen. But it did get me thinking, investing in relationships more. I've always run a small circle. Because I just always felt I was moving at a different rate or speed than the people around me. And I didn't want anybody getting in my way or slowing me down, right or wrong or indifferent. That's just who I was. But now I step back as somebody, that's, over the hill, right? Over 50. And I'm like, am I doing this wrong? Right?
That should not be considered over the hill by today's standards. You should be in great shape, over 50, and, taking on the world. I mean,
I like it. I appreciate that. Yeah. But what do you think? What do you think about relationships being one of those things that's more important than money?
Of course, no one could deny the importance of relationships. And to liken that to investing, again, investing largely is a game of having a team, having relationships, having contacts, who can help you exert leverage over a deal or a problem to get it solved, right? So relationships, no one could deny that that's important. The value of masterminding, because, it goes back to the who, not how idea. And that's super important. So no one could deny how important relationships are. They're one of the major currencies of life. However, I do want to point out an interesting distinction. And there was a famous author is a famous author who wrote a book about this. And I just can't for the life of me remember who it was. But it's kind of counterintuitive. And I want to say this because very few people understand this. And you made me think of it when you said you run in a very small circle. And look up this concept. I can't remember who was the person behind it who came up with this theory that seems to be very true. And it is the value of weak ties. Okay? So a lot of people would think, well, I've got these deep friendships, deep relationships, it's quality over quantity, right? I'd rather have 3 close friends than 300 acquaintances, okay? And that actually is not necessarily true. And that's behind this whole weak ties theory. And what they did is they studied people's lives for a long time, and they found that people with more relationships that were actually weaker, interesting idea, weaker relationships, but more of them, those people were able to get a new job sooner if they were laid off. They were able to get a new romantic relationship sooner because they just knew more people.
Interesting.
And the weak ties people had more and better romantic relationships. They were able to be introduced to new people. They were able to be introduced to new employers. They were able to be networked into, doctors and specialists that could help them with health issues and overcome all sorts of things. They were invited to more events, more social events, more parties. They just had bigger networks. So I think this goes back to balance, right? There is a balance between this. And you do want to have deep relationships, of course, but you don't want to be so focused and consumed with those deep relationships that you don't cultivate some weak relationships and have, a higher quantity of weak ties, because it goes back to the idea of Metcalfe's law. Okay. And by the way, the person who promulgated this theory did not talk about Metcalfe. That's just me, or at least not that I know of. But Metcalfe is the person who invented the Ethernet, which is the predecessor to the internet. Okay. And that's the idea of networking computers. Okay. And the idea behind Metcalfe's law is that the value of a network expands exponentially by each new node you add to the network. So think about a simple example of the telephone, right? If I had this telephone and you have your phone, Michael, and we can talk to each other, and that's great. But if we can only talk to each other, the phone has limited value. The fact that we can talk to the entire world has incredible value. The network grows exponentially with each node on the network. So balance the weak ties with the deep ties. Very important.
No, I love all of that. And again, I'm often reminded that, and I think about myself, when I started my wealth journey at 30 after basically wasting my 20s, right? I spent every penny I made when I was in my 20s and didn't figure it out until I got smacked in the stock market. But, no matter when you figure this out, never forget your health, your mobility, and relationships. Because again, I know from firsthand experience, as someone who ignored all of that for too long, it takes more work and energy to get back later. So again, I want to shout out Ken and Daniil for making me think about these things. Again, it does correlate with what I've seen. And of course, happy investing.
Happy investing and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.